Hello everyone and welcome back to what is going to be, well, it's going to be quite an interesting one, to be honest with you. Loads of classes are getting buffed and nerfed and there's all sorts going on. So if you're new around here, make sure you hit that subscribe button and of course leave the video with a like. Now I don't think it was a secret, to be honest, that I was a bit outraged by the taunt going to 35 seconds on Chaos Avenger, as were many of you, and we have got some progress made on this. So let us talk Chaos Avenger, which of course is an endgame class that was balanced around Void Highlord's current performance levels. Due to the fact that we're changing Void Highlord, don't worry, we'll come on to that in a minute, we're looking at changing Chaos Avenger's overall damage output so that it's still proportional to Void Highlord's. As many of you noticed, Chaos Avenger's Taunt was made non-loopable. We intended this as it is the first in a series of updates to various classes with taunt abilities so that it can create a more timing-based mechanics instead of spamming taunt skills. However, in doing so, the taunt on Chaos Avenger is currently on a skill that is making it unwieldy. What a word that is. So that change is going to get looked at again and the issue resolved so we don't feel like we're missing out on damage in order to save our taunt. But the most important thing here is basically taunts that are loopable are being phased out, and that's going to happen to all sorts of classes, so Naval Commander could be coming under fire very soon. Not too sure how I feel about that yet, but I'm sure we'll talk about that further in a different video. This question was posted to me: should we get a rebuff or a rework of Dragon of Time? And this, my friends, is the answer. Dragon of Time is a class that's fairly late game and is quite difficult to get. While we don't intend for this class to be a replacement for endgame classes, it's currently performing under the level that we'd like. Because of this, we'll be looking at raising its direct damage output to raise its performance in farming. Solo performance is not far off from where we intend, so we likely won't be giving it any buffs focused around that. Personally, to me, Dragon of Time is just a weird class anyway. It's not one I'd ever think of using for either of those purposes. I know it's designed around them, but it's sort of one of them classes that's doing two things at once but not doing either particularly well. But there again, I guess when you've got more top tier classes to use, then something like Dragon of Time does end up in the bank anyway. So I'm probably just looking at it from a very biased point of view. Next up, we have Legion Revenant, and this one is gonna make people very happy, I suspect. Obviously an endgame class, but it has scaled fairly poorly with recent updates to features and mechanics and is now performing under where we'd like it to be. Since farming is its primary role, we plan to make it shine more in this category rather than just being a generalist class, so we plan to give it its second ability, AoE capability. For anyone who has no idea what that's on about, it's just saying the area of effect on ability 2 pretty much will just hit anything and everything in the room. That's all you really need to worry about. So let us move on to the next big one in this list, Void Highlord, which is going to have a nerf by the looks of it. So VHL was recently heavily buffed and is currently overperforming past its intended mark, both due to the buff and to some server bug fixes. This is partially due to having new longer fights in the game that were previously not present and so were not heavily accounted for, as we are unsure of the direction they would take. Because of this, we plan to decrease the power of Abyssal Sacrifice. Additionally, we'll make Abyssal Sacrifice's affect all damage dealt to the enemy, not just physical. Am I personally happy about Void Highlord having a little nerf? No, not really. I would have just preferred it was left alone. I know lots of you guys out there really hate that Void Highlord is this almighty power that nothing else can beat, but I would just rather another class come into the game and that can just be brought up to its level or beyond, or just buff an old class, you know, that sort of thing. But that's just my thinking. Next up, we have Yami No Ronin. This is another late game class that's performing slightly under where we'd like it and has a few description errors, such as Flash actually increasing damage taken by up to 100% instead of 60%. Because we normally balance by performance, we'll likely update the description, but we'd also like to give it performance buff focused around its defensive play mode. So instead of leaving the damage taken at 100%, we'll look at lowering the effects of Flash a bit while increasing its passive skills to increase its base performance. So that's quite exciting, and it may mean that Yami now has to come out of my bank. Let's move on to one which is going to be Vampire Lord, and I suspect this might disappoint many people actually, because this is probably the only perk about Vampire Lord. Let's dig into this. So it's a mid-game to late game class that grew extremely disproportionately powerful with the recent game updates because of how the class operates. We don't wish for this class to outperform other late end game classes, so we plan to adjust its power just a little bit to compensate. Its base performance is actually not far off what we'd like, but its scaling with aura enhancements and potions are what we'd like to address. Because of this, we plan to raise its auto attack cooldown just a little bit, so that is definitely going to change up this class, and I suspect those of you, as Jacob pointed out to me earlier, farming with this for Legion Revenant may find it slightly more of a challenge. Now let us move on to Chrono Assassin. This one, mid-game to late-game class that was strongly buffed by the haste stacking server fix and now has max haste when it was not balanced to. Because of this, we plan to slow down the class just a little back to where it was before the server changes and fix several bugs in the class. I mean, that's one we can sort of glance over. I never even use that class, don't even have it to be honest with you, but that may affect some of you out there if that is a particular favourite. Now let us move on to the finale, which is Chaos Slayer. Earlier late game class that has grown disproportionately powerful with recent game engine updates and feature updates. Because of this, we plan to lower its direct damage output and its AoE state while giving a few quality of life features. We'd like to make Chaos Blight only accessible during its single target mode, as it's a DPS focused mechanic on the class, but we'll give it a weaker damage boost that will still be present in AoE mode. Additionally, we plan to make its heal activate 100% of the time, but it will be weaker in compensation. However, the final healing overtime output will still be the same. So guys, lots and lots of changes, and hopefully there's going to be some other classes that they may also look at as the time goes on. But there's quite a lot to think about, just going to have to digest it and see what we actually think. I don't see anything too major in there other than the non-looping of taunts anymore. I think that is the biggest change, and that will definitely change up people's strategies a little bit when it comes to challenge fights, just because you're going to have someone running that who actually knows how to time a taunt, so that will be exciting. Anyway, thank you all very much for watching. Leave the video a like, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you all again incredibly soon.